Hello, good evening. I call this meeting to order at 6:30. Let's see, we have Jack Nicolai here, Steve Brown, myself, Dana Powers, and Nick Poloni. Ted is absent tonight. And what is it? Okay, present visitors, great. Then we have Marquez, Connie, and Vicky tonight. So I'll take a motion on the agenda.
I'll move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And motion carries. And then can you read our
Yes.
bit?
I motion to go into closed session in the middle school library pursuant to the following statutes. Wisconsin Statute 19.851C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. And this will deal with an employee asking for a leave request. And then also Wisconsin Statute 19.851E, which is for deliberating or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. And this will be dealing with negotiations strategy.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Nick?
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Dana, aye. And we are in closed. Hi, I motion to adjourn our previous meeting.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Great. Welcome. I call this meeting to order at 7:00 p.m. We have board members present tonight. We have Jack Nicolai, Steve Brown, myself, Dana Powers, and Nick Poloni. Hello. Ted Gergen is absent tonight. Administrators, we have Miss Patty Fitzgerald, Dr. Connie Valenza, Dr. Vicki King, her first meeting here, and Marquez Guzman. If you could please stand and join me for the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Was anything coming? Perfect. May I have a motion on the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. My president's report tonight is probably going to be my trickiest one yet, because it is Connie's last meeting with us. I'm going to try really hard to not cry while I'm doing this. Connie, it has been such an amazing experience working with you. I have worked with, many a corporate folk, and you by far surpass any of them in integrity and I don't even know what else. I don't even know what other words to say. I should have written this down. I am going to switch to humor because that's better. There was a meeting. I would like you guys all to help me figure out the details on this. There was a meeting when we were talking about hiring somebody. And Connie said, well, we need somebody who's hot damn. And we were all like, wait a second, rewind. What is that? How do we find somebody like that? And what does that even mean? So I bet we were giggling about it it had to have been the whole meeting. Of course, my shipping was delayed, but you will be getting a t-shirt from us that says, hot damn. You can wear it with pride.
It's the rough edges.
It is. So you can show everybody that not only were you advocating for us to get somebody hot damn in whatever position it was, but that you yourself carry that title.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Connie. Would anyone else like to? I understand. You can't get through.
You have been a breath of fresh air. No question. Gonna miss you.
I have thoroughly enjoyed working with you and having worked for superintendents as a teacher, school administrator myself, and having been on the board with other administrators at all levels. You have been extraordinary in the 1 year, the second year, and the third year, and we could not have had a more thoughtful, engaging, and smart person sitting in the seat as district administrator.
As some of my phone calls to you would go, I do what I do here because simply for my kids. And I remember specifically in the light of the COVID situation and all the things that had to be put together. And I could see how my kids were being affected, and I'd call and you would have just such great ideas. And I do this for my kids, and I think and I feel and I know that you did it for my kids too, and everyone else's kids here, which is, I think, the only reason anyone should be working in a school district. So those who take care of my own kids, which you help facilitate, has a very special place for me too. So I appreciate all the effort that you helped conduct and orchestrate with the rest of the staff, because as a newer dad to some degree, and with craziness that happened, it was you know, it was challenging and it was scary at times, and you made me feel a lot better about that. So thank you.
Okay, moving on.
Even though Vicky is going to be absolutely fantastic, we will still absolutely miss you.
It's been my pleasure. I've said all along. I had shared that when I was superintendent in Platteville, the whole time I was superintendent, I felt like I really missed being a high school principal. I loved being a high school principal, and it just wasn't as fun being a superintendent. Being here in Salem, where you're more engaged with kids and you get to see the little kids walk by your office and wave and bring you beautiful little projects and all that kind of stuff, it has renewed kind of that feeling of purpose around being a school administrator for me. So I really appreciate that. It allowed me to end my career feeling really good about working closely with kids, which was what always mattered to me. So thank you very much. So moving on.
Anyway, okay, that is my full report tonight. Steve, clerk's report.
Yes, I have nothing specific to report with regards to my role as clerk.
Super. CISA 2 update?
Yeah, just a brief comments about CISA 2. I've served on the Board of Control for CISA 2 now for 3 years. I'm just starting my 4th year. I was re-elected by our region, by our area, by our cluster, I should say. By the way, Cluster J is a cluster that's part of our area. And then also I was re-elected to be the vice chairperson, and our new chairperson, Marion Vinny, will do an outstanding job. And at future board meetings, I'll give more extensive reports, all within no more than 2 minutes. That was the promise that I made to both Connie and to Dana when I asked to be able to give a CISA update. Thank you.
Can we give you like an electric shock if you go over 2 minutes?
Yes.
Okay.
Dan will make sure this chair is properly
Electrocuted.
circuited.
Oh, boy.
Sure.
Okay, sure, I made it up. So anyway, thank you.
Treasurer's report.
So on behalf of Ted Gergen, not being here tonight, I will present the treasurer's report dated May 2022. We have a general fund cash account, May ending balance of $518,212.15. Credit cards with an ending balance of $8,937.43. EBC Flex and HRA cash account with an ending balance of $13,865.48. Capital Improvement Fund, or Fund 46, with an ending balance of $2,082,836.67. Petty cash with an ending balance of $300. LGIP with an ending balance of $3,502,117.65. And that's a grand total of cash assets for May 2020 of $6,126,269.38. Can a board member make a motion to approve the treasurer's report dated
I
May?
move we approve the treasurer's report as presented.
Can we do that? So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And motion carries.
All
I want
right.
to see that $300 go up.
That's right.
Hey, if it changes, that means something's going on there. So,
Can't wait.
and now for the review and approval of the payment of accounts payable bills. These checks are numbered 71060 through 71138, as well as 2021-00821 through 2122-00034. And that's a total for checks of $813,200.33 for the month of May 1st through May 31st, 2022.
5 pages of
Amazon.
Amazon.
Yeah.
That was the end of the year, end of the year orders. June should be
orders.
much smaller.
I motion to approve payment of accounts payable bills as presented.
As presented. So moved.
Second. Jack got it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
All right, and now for the monthly revenue and expense reports. Starting off with the revenue. For May 2022, you can see through May, on the first two lines are the total revenue limit sources. We received 69.25% of our property tax and our general aid as of May 2022. And compared to last year at that same point, we were at 66.97. So we've received a little bit more as a percentage compared to last year. And then all the remaining revenues, but the bulk of it is in the total revenue limit section, but the remaining revenues, we've received 67.06%, or that's total Fund 10 revenue, compared to 65% last year. So we're a little bit ahead of schedule. In June, we received the remaining of our general aid or state aid. So that'll pop up on the next board meeting. And we also book our property taxes to June 30th, even though we don't get them till August. So next month, you should see the revenue creep up to like 99%, but that'll be in about a month. Moving on to expenses. So through May 2022, total Fund 10 expenses of 49.89%, and that's down a little from the previous year. A bulk of our expenses come in salaries and benefits, which we book. We pay most of our teachers through the summer. So once again, similar to that property tax, even though we don't do some of the payments till July and August, they do get booked in June. So that number for salary and benefits will creep up closer to 99%. And then the other two big items are our transfers to Fund 27 and also our transfer to Fund 46. And those don't get booked till June 30th as well. So most of our expenses, or a good chunk of our expenses, don't happen until June. But compared to last year, we're slightly under budget at this point. Any questions? All right.
Okay, so then we have a set of minutes of our special school board meeting, May 24th, 2022, as printed or amended.
Motion to approve the minutes of the special school board meeting dated 5/24/2022 as printed and or amended.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And motion carries.
We have the minutes of the regular school board meeting of 5/24/2022 as printed or amended.
I motion to approve the minutes of the regular school board meeting dated 5/24/2022 as printed and or amended.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
And lastly, the minutes of our special school board meeting, 6/22/2022 as printed or amended.
I motion to approve the minutes of the special school board meeting, dated 6/22/2022 as printed and or amended.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I am abstaining, and motion carries. Okay, public comments. We did not receive anyone sign up or anyone email anything, so we will move on.
The first action item we're pleased to say, as you know, the referendum, there are many aspects to that process, but one of the most significant ones is actually building what it is that we shared with our community we were going to do. So back quite a while ago now, we issued an RFP for construction management firms, and we had 8 different firms respond to that. The Building and Grounds Committee met along with the Building and Grounds Director, Business Administrator, District Administrator, and new District Administrator to narrow down the firms for interviews. 3 were selected, including Cullen, Findorf, and Myron. Firms were interviewed at the special board meeting that we just passed the minutes on June 22nd, 2022. And a decision coming out of that meeting was made to recommend Myron Construction as our construction manager for the referendum project at the June 28th regular board meeting, so this evening. We have a couple people from Myron here this evening. If you'd like to just stand up and introduce yourself.
my wife Erin. I'm Brian Stark from Myron and our Milwaukee office. I'm project executive for this project, so we're happy to be here. And, very glad to receive the recommendation.
Yeah, so we went through a pretty extensive process, but a couple things I think really stood out for us in making the decision. One is the large number of districts in Wisconsin that Myron has worked with, all with very good references. The fact that they have experience in CISA 2, significant experience working with school districts in our CISA area, and significant square footage of educational construction. And I think where really there were a couple points that really stood out in the decision making, and I just want to read a couple of these because I think they're important. From the K-12 school educational experience, Myron builds more educational facilities than any other construction manager in the state. With extensive experience, we've had the opportunity to work on numerous district-wide projects similar to yours. We will use our expertise and knowledge to assist in updating, renovating, and modernizing your structures and create phasing plans to minimize disruption to staff and students during construction. This obviously was a key for us because much of the construction that's going to be done will be done within a building that we need our kids to still be able to live and learn in. And so working with a construction company that's very experienced in working in school settings was very important to us. The other aspect was Myron and PRA. As you remember, PRA we already had approved as our architect. Myron has a long-standing partnership with PRA Architects and have completed 90+ projects totaling more than $300 million. Over the years, this experience has led us to better understand each other's design and construction parameters, ensuring quality and timely projects. So again, that knowing that this was a team that had worked together many times, that this was not a new kind of pairing, and feeling good about that piece. So just kind of popping up here, this is actually the project team that we'll be working with most of the time. You already met Brian this evening as part of that. And I will say one of the things that has been very impressive is they're already boots on the ground here. They spent a long time today going over our facilities and kind of looking at and meeting with building and grounds directors and our technology people and just really starting to get a feel for kind of what this project really is going to look like. You can see the overall cost. The total, just an estimated, it's very difficult because you are going to have overruns, of course. There's going to be those bringing in subcontractors. So PRA kind of did a comparison across, just saying, let's say that a project of this size has some assumptions about it. And in the end, when looking at it, although the pricing with Myron was a little bit different than some of the other firms used, I spent a long time talking with Nick about making sure that I understood, how to compare those costs. And so Myron came out very favorably then within that. So after all of that, the motion that I would like the board to consider would be to approve a contract with Myron Construction for construction management services. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add to that, or?
No, we really appreciate it. We're excited. I think this will be a good project, and we're committed to making sure that it's done right and safely, and everybody is happy at the end. So we appreciate it.
Will your wife be with you on project? No, just this.
She's just along for the ride tonight.
Date night.
Yeah, date night. School board meeting.
Oh, that's exciting.
Oh, gosh. Welcome, thank you. Well, soon welcome, I don't know, we'll see.
And thanks for the presentation. Obviously the three in which we were considering, there's a lot of things to consider, and I felt like at the end when we made the decision collectively as a group, it was good. So excellent. So
You want to make a motion?
yeah, I motion to approve the contract with Myron Construction for construction management services.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
You're pretty fast.
Have a fun night.
Yeah, you don't have to stay here the whole time.
Yeah.
We look forward to seeing you at future meetings.
Oh, yeah.
You might be missing out. It's good stuff coming up. So I'm going to have Marquez talk a little bit about this particular. It's in addition on the referendum project, but really more about making sure that there's no significant errors done in this overall building project. So why don't you share a little bit about?
Sure. So as we begin our referendum project, one of the things that we need to have done is a site survey. We've received a proposal from JSD Professional Services for site survey services. And that's a service that is contracted directly by the owner, by us. It's not done through our construction company or through our architect. So we have full freedom to select who we want. JSD is PRA's civil engineering firm, so that's who they work with for civil engineering needs on projects. So having the same firm doing the civil engineering work do the survey eliminates the possibility that there's people finger pointing later should anything get missed. So we think it's in our best interest to kind of go with the same firm that's going to be doing the civil engineering work later. So they, as part of their survey proposal, they presented a cost estimate and have laid it out there in this table. So there's a boundary and topographic survey, there's the utility location coordination, there's the title report, and then there's the delineation of the wetlands. And those each have their own little costs for a total cost estimate of $31,400. And so we are just asking for, or recommending that we approve the contract with JSD Professional Services for site survey services for the referendum project.
I move to approve the contract with JSD Professional Services for site survey services for the referendum project.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Yay.
On to some hiring. We have, the first is a recommendation to hire a kindergarten teacher. We have Jennifer H. Simmons. She has been a kindergarten teacher at Crosby Elementary School in Harvard, Illinois. She was a special education instructional aide at Crosby Elementary, kindergarten teacher at Midlothian KinderCare Learning Center, and a special education long-term substitute at Harrison School, Wonder Lake in Illinois. The motion to consider would be to approve a 1.0 FTE contract for the 2022-23 school year of not less than $50,300.
I move to approve a 1.0 FTE contract for the 2022-23 school year of not less than $50,300.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Then we have another kindergarten teacher, and so some of these, it can be a little confusing because you might not necessarily have two, vacancies at a grade level. There may be some shifting around that takes place where you have a teacher that moves into one grade level where there's a vacancy. And so we'll talk a little bit later about the kind of a hiring update in terms of which positions we're trying to fill and where we've filled. But this again would be a kindergarten position. Ashley N. Rossmiller, she has an early childhood special education teacher at Cooper Elementary School in Burlington, Wisconsin. She has a BS in elementary and early childhood education from Winona State University, and a special education add-on licensure from University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. The motion to consider would be to approve a 1.0 FTE contract for the 2022-2023 school year of not less than $45,800.
A motion to approve a 1.0 FTE contract for the 2022-2023 school year for Ashley Rossmiller of not less than $45,800.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Then we have an elementary grade level teacher, and again, just to clarify, when we hire, typically we make that very broad because based on your overall population at a grade level, you could shift up into a different grade or down into a different grade. Whitney Clay was a student teacher at Yorkville Elementary School in Yorkville. She had clinical placements in Kenosha School District in Yorkville. She has a bachelor's in elementary education, a minor in English as a second language, from University of Wisconsin Parkside. The motion to consider would be to approve a 1.0 FTE contract for the 2022-23 school year of not less than $44,000.
I move to approve a 1.0 FTE contract for the 2022-2023 school year for Whitney Clay of not less than $44,000.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Another elementary grade level teacher, Abby Gross. She's a 5th grade teacher at Green Charter School of the Midlands in Irmo, South Carolina. Prior to that, a long-term sub, so definitely from Wisconsin, although she traveled a little bit at Pleasant Prairie Elementary in Kenosha. She has a BS in elementary education from the University of Louisville. The motion to consider would be to approve a 1.0 FTE contract for the 2022-23 school year of not less than $46,700.
I move to approve a 1.0 FTE contract for the 2022-23 school year for Abby Gross of not less than $46,700.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And then Megan Turk, she did her student teaching at Lakewood Elementary School in Twin Lakes, Wisconsin. Student teaching at River Bluff Middle School in Stoughton, Wisconsin. She has a bachelor's in elementary education from University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. The motion to consider would be to approve a 1.0 FTE contract for the 2022-23 school year of not less than $44,000.
Motion to approve a 1.0 FTE contract for the 2022-2023 school year for Megan Turk of not less than $44,000.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And we have a middle school English language arts reading teacher, hiring Sarah Infacino. She was a principal actually at Waukegan High School, social studies teacher at Grace Lake High School and at Waukegan High School. She has an MS in educational leadership from Concordia University and a bachelor's in secondary education in Lakeland College, Sheboygan. She's actually a familiar person around here. She's been a kind of a designated long-term building sub for the last year or so she's very familiar with our building. Motion to consider would be to approve a 1.0 FTE contract for the 2022-2023 school year of not less than $57,200.
I move to approve a 1.0 FTE contract for the 2022-2023 school year for Sarah Infusino of not less than $57,200.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And then a middle school math teacher, David Hall, was middle school math teacher at Trevor-Wilmot Consolidated School District. Prior to that, an instructional coach and technology integration specialist at Delavan Darien School District, and an interim administrator with Lynn Joint 6 School District. Has a master's in education from Lesley University and a bachelor's in education from University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point. The motion to consider would be to approve a 1.0 FTE contract for the 2022-23 school year of not less than $65,700.
I move to approve a 1.0 FTE contract for the 2022-23 school year for David Hall of not less than $65,700.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
We have a new hire for a special education teacher, Denise Temple. She was a special education teacher with Kenosha Unified School District. Prior to that, a special education paraprofessional with Antioch Upper Grade School. She has a bachelor's in special education from West Georgia University. A motion to consider would be to approve a 1.0 FTE contract for the 2022-23 school year of not less than $52,100.
Motion to approve a 1.0 FTE contract for the 2022-2023 school year for Denise Temple of not less than $52,100.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Then moving on, we have a couple resignations, so a couple more to fill. Brittany Borkowski was a 4-year 4K teacher. She began with Salem in the 2021-2022 school year. looking to have a little more family connection, I believe there. The motion to consider would be to accept Brittany Borkowski's resignation request effective immediately.
I motion to accept Brittany Borkowski's resignation request effective immediately.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And then Amy Prochnow, third grade special education teacher resignation. She began with Salem in the 2006-2007 school year. She's taught various grade levels of special education and has served as a coach and club leader. The motion to consider would be to accept Amy Prochnow's resignation request effective immediately.
I move to accept Amy Prochnow's resignation request effective immediately.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
We'll let you take over for a while.
All right. Yeah. Sorry if you guys are getting sick of me already, but so one of the items that we typically do in June is approval of the 2020 or approval of the budget changes for the current fiscal year, and that's in accordance with Wisconsin state statutes. Last year, I only changed budget amounts for our grant revenues and a couple other random things. Our auditors want to see us kind of updating every single line item. So we have about 1,000 different accounts for Salem. So rather than put up the 1,000 accounts and show you every little change, I tried to summarize it at a high level. Obviously when we're budgeting, we passed the budget in October. So at that point, we kind of know our student count. We know a number of factors, but we also don't know some other things. Like what percentage of students are going to pay their student fees, what are interest rates going to be, what's the health insurance renewal going to be. So that's the reason why we do the budget changes. I'm monitoring this on a monthly basis, but at the end of the year, kind of looking at what did we budget, what did we actually spend, and this is kind of just getting everything to balance out. So on the revenue side, we did have some higher local revenues. The biggest one was interest. So interest rates were higher this year than they were last year. So we did receive a little bit more money in interest overall across all of our investments and in our cash accounts. I overestimated our open enrollment revenue, so I had to lower that by about $50,000. That wasn't necessarily a bad thing. It was just an overestimation on my part. Other state and miscellaneous revenue was about $20,000 that we got additional revenue from. So none of these are big amounts, but the big one was we did have a little bit lower federal revenue than we did budget originally, and that's because of ESSER II. We didn't claim as much of ESSER II as I had thought we would at this point. So we still have another year to submit claims for ESSER II. I have no doubt that we'll get our full grant allocation for ESSER II. But in total, these changes come to a net revenue reduction of $125,049. The Fund 10 total budget is still projected to end with a positive balance, and I'll show you that on the next slide or the next couple slides. But here is a summary of the changes on the revenue side for Fund 10. As you can see, the revenue limit, I knew what those were going to be exactly, so there's no change there. Those are coming in exactly like I budgeted. On the interest and other local, there's small changes, and then kind of the other things I just talked about are on those other lines as well. But that net change is reducing the budget for Fund 10 by $125,000. On the expense side, there's a little bit more on the expense side. As I mentioned, we do our health insurance renewal in January. We passed the budget in October, so I'm kind of estimating where we're gonna get the renewal at. I try to be a little more conservative because I'd rather have a little bit more on the plus side than on the negative side. So we did overestimate our benefit costs by about $180,000, so we're lowering that. Transportation we did a kind of a mid-year renewal due to increased costs. They had to pay drivers more, and then obviously fuel was costing more. So we did spend more on transportation this year. Utilities came in, I overestimated utilities. I thought they were gonna come in much higher, so we're lowering the budget by about $60,000 there. I did budget some facilities improvement costs. So at the time we passed the budget, the referendum was still uncertain. So we did kind of budget some facilities costs. We have not done some of the things we were gonna do because those are gonna be included in the referendum. So we're lowering the budget in that area. Additionally, some technology and textbooks, I significantly overestimated. That was my confusion. Some of the things we bought last year at the end, some Chromebooks and some additional ARC, the American Reading Company materials. When we budgeted our transfers to Fund 27 and Fund 46, I came in low with kind of putting it in these other categories. So now we're going to shift those savings in and move it into Fund 46 and also into Fund 27. And then last year we did have a payroll liability adjustment during the audit that came in at $150,000. So our payroll accounts were not accurate in the past. So last year's adjustment was the $150,000. I carried that adjustment over in the budget this year, but our payroll accounts are clean now, so we won't need that. So we're taking, we're removing that adjustment as well. So in total, we're reducing our expenses by $336,934. And factoring in the revenue reduction, we are projected to end the fiscal year with a positive balance of $239,354, which is pretty good. So that amount can either roll into fund balance, and that would increase our fund balance from 15% up to 16.75, which would give us potentially a little more cushion down the road. To put it in perspective, a lot of districts in the area have fund balances kind of in that 20 to 25% amount, so that's kind of moving in that direction. The other thing we can do is move that additional positive balance into Fund 46, and we could increase our Fund 46 transfer. We have until July 30th to do that, so at the next board meeting, once all of our invoices come in from June and everything's booked, I'll have like a more exact number. But for now, this is what I'm recommending for our budget adjustments or budget changes, and then in July I will update you and let you know what our actual Fund 46 transfer is and what we ended the year. And of course, that is still audited, so that number could fluctuate, but should be within a very small percent. On the next slide, I just kind of summarize the changes on the expense side. So the thing I was proud of with Connie is our salaries were within $35,000 out of a budget of $5.7 million. So that's within 0.4% of our salaries. So that means our projections were accurate. As I mentioned, the benefits came in a little lower. We didn't know the health insurance renewal rate, but I overestimated. And then you can kind of see the remaining ones that I summarized on the previous page, but I just wanted to present that to you. And I'm doing this all on a line-by-line basis, and this is just a summary. So if you have any questions, you can let me know, or if you see anything later, feel free to ask. But those are the changes I recommend for our budget.
You must really like numbers.
I do, yeah. So I didn't put it on there, but I guess we're asking for the approval of the budget changes as presented.
I motion to approve the 2021-22 budget changes as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Oh, another one.
Yay!
Never ending.
So currently, the Salem School District has two different credit cards. We have an American Express and we have a Visa, which the administrators currently have. One of the things, and I don't want to, I wouldn't. Ideally, people are only using their personal credit, the credit card that was issued to them, and there's no sharing. But because not everybody has a credit card, or we only have a limited amount, there is some sharing, which is not ideal, and would like to move away from that. So I looked into this purchasing card program, or P-card program. So over a quarter of Wisconsin school districts participate in the WASBO purchasing card program, and across 18 states, there's over 1,000 school districts participating in the P-card program. I used the P-card in my last two districts, and I was familiar with the process, and I thought it worked better. So I guess what I'm proposing is that we close out the two different credit cards, the American Express and Visa, and move to a single credit card. We would issue multiple to the administrators, our Director of Technology, Building and Grounds, and a few other people. Additionally, we would have some available for checkout. And so that would be for teachers, rather than use their personal card and then have to fill out paper reimbursement requests, they could check out the card with the principal's pre-approval and then just return the receipt. And that would cut back on employee reimbursements. We would get a larger rebate or cash reward for the credit card because so many districts are in this. It has a big purchasing power, so we get a larger rebate back at the end of the year. It does integrate with Skyward, so so we wouldn't have to have these paper requests or. And I would actually put it on the card holder to scan the receipt into Skyward. So it would just save time and increase efficiency for our business office. And then we'd have better controls and an audit trail. There would be no more sharing of cards. It would just be issued to individual card holders, and then there would be some available for checkout for those that aren't issued cards.
The only question I have is with regards to closing those out right now and us looking for bonds. And I'm not sure if that affects bond rating, what our total credit ability is as a district. Do we want to wait till close those out until after we do get bonds set?
Coincidentally,
We just issued.
Oh, did we?
we will be talking about that.
Okay, perfect.
But I also looked at this as being a good transition time with Connie leaving. And I actually don't have a card issued in my name either, so I've been operating with a credit card for a year and a half here. But then with Vicky coming on board and Christy coming, I thought it'd be a good time to make the switch. And so there's a little resolution there. And I would do updates, kind of saying, here's who we've issued them to, and if we ever have any issues with receipts or questioning any expenses, I'd bring that to your attention as well. But I would just, I guess we're looking for a motion to consider approving the resolution to authorize the purchasing cards.
I move that we approve authorizing issuance of individual purchasing cards. Can I do it?
Is that right? Okay. So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
All right, another one. So school fees. So this is something we have to do annually. Last year we did it in July. This year we thought we would, kind of do it a little sooner and, probably do this in June every year. So we actually reduced our fees for the 21-22 school year, coming out of where we were in the midst of the pandemic. We were unsure of a lot of things, so we actually reduced a lot of our fees down by $5. So a lot of these are actually just increasing them back to what they used to be pre-pandemic. Additionally, the cost of everything is going up, so it's also kind of in line with other increases that we are all experiencing. Not that we want to add to that, but that's kind of where some of these increased costs are coming from. So on the I did put in the normal black cost column, the first one, that's kind of what we're presenting here. And then I did have the previous year cost and then the change in cost on the right-hand side in red. So we would be looking at increasing the registration costs across the board by $5. And then additionally, looking at increasing the sport fee and the club fee by $5. Additionally, we know that for transportation costs for sports, that's going to be an increased cost. We know that the materials for a lot of our clubs are going to go up as well, so that's that as well. We do offer a $150 cap on sport and club fees per family, so we do have a number of families that have multiple kids or kids that are involved in many different things, so we do kind of cap that out at $150. But that's looking at registration and the sport fee and club fee. Snack milk, there would be no change because the price of milk that we have in our contract is still set, so there's no change there. Chromebook insurance, we're keeping that set as well because we do want people to purchase the insurance, and we don't want to potentially lose some people buying the insurance if the costs were to go up too much. And then on the breakfast and lunch side of things, so the last the last two full school years and the end of the pandemic school year, we did offer free breakfast and lunch. As of right now, that's coming to an end, but there is still some talks going on at the federal level. So obviously we could still update these if things were to change. But we also did not increase our breakfast or lunch costs. We haven't increased it since the 2019-2020 school year. So obviously that increase is a little bit more than some people might expect, but it's also because we haven't increased costs in 3 years. And over the last 3 years, food prices have definitely gone up. So we would be looking at increasing the breakfast cost from $1.30 to $1.75, and the lunch cost from $3 up to $3.30.
So then just one thing to add to, in all of these cases, obviously, if a family is eligible for free and reduced lunch, but then in addition, if a family is eligible for that, we have waived many of those, like the registration fees and that in those cases. So.
And so then we will be sending out communications very soon, just to kind of inform families about, I was waiting until the summer school session 1 ended before we started, because we still offer free breakfast and lunch during the summer. We are part of the summer food service program, and we're eligible to participate in that for the next 2 summers following this year. So we still could do free breakfast and lunch during the summer, but as of right now, the waivers for the school year are ending. So we will be sending out reminders to families, hey, just a reminder that, breakfast and lunch are no longer free, but we do encourage everybody to apply for the free and reduced lunch if they do qualify, and if they do, then obviously they wouldn't have to pay for breakfast or lunch, and some of the fees would be cleared as well.
I move to approve the student fees as presented for the 2022-2023 school year.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
How would you stop talking, Marcus?
I know, starting to.
Jeez, Marquez.
So this is my last one. So this is looking at our insurance coverage for the school district. And when we talk about insurance, sometimes we talk about health insurance, but this is our property insurance, our liability, auto, crime, workers' comp. Those insurances, our policies coincide with the fiscal year. They start July 1st and end June 30th. The renewals occur annually. We typically get those in May. This year it's occurring a little later. So last year we reviewed this in May. This year we're talking about it in June. So our insurance policies expire, in a couple days, and we would like to renew for next year. One of the things I did when we got our renewals is I kind of looked at our property value and noticed that they were kind of underestimating what our property value and the building and everything was worth. I also checked with our architect to see what it would cost to rebuild this whole school if something, a tornado or fire or something catastrophic were to go on. And so we did update our property value with our insurance company and got an updated renewal. And so obviously that increased the premiums a little bit, but at least we know that we have adequate coverage. So we received proposals from 2 different insurance brokers. We received one from Tricor, who's our current broker, and then we also received a proposal from R&R Insurance. I kind of went back and forth to make sure that their proposals were offering the same coverage and they were comparable and apples to apples comparison. And in the end, R&R's proposal came in 25% lower than our current insurance carrier or our insurance broker, and it offered the same, if not better, coverage in some areas. And so that that's a considerable savings from our end. So I guess I'm recommending that we make the switch and pay less in our insurance premiums for this upcoming school year or fiscal year.
I move to approve the 2022-2023 insurance proposal from R&R with the lowest premium.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Then every time this year, we set the board calendar for the following year. I see I have a lot of Tuesday evenings that are free. But if you take a look at the recommended board calendar, you can see that we traditionally meet on that 4th Tuesday of the month, and that works really well for July, August, September, and October. Not so well in November because we hit Thanksgiving So a couple options there. If you want to stay with Tuesdays, you could do the November 15th or the 29th. It would still be in that month. December 27th, same problem there. It falls during the week of winter break, so you could potentially move it to December 20th if you want to stay with Tuesday. And then Tuesday, January 24th is parent-teacher conferences, and that has kind of resulted in a situation where parents or our teachers that are also parents would prefer that not be the case, that they be on top of each other that way. So an option could be January 17th. Then going into February falls where it needs to fall, but then March falls during spring break, so you could move that back to March 21st. And then April, May, and June fall on the calendar where you would hope they would fall. So based on those couple deciding factors, then would be to accept the 2022-2023 board calendar as presented. So I'm just going to go back to start out with November. Any thoughts about that?
I don't want to go with the later date in November. It'll put us 2 weeks away from December.
What if we just bumped it all up 1 week for all of these
Yeah.
for consistency? So make
I
it the
agree.
third week if,
So that would still give us 3 weeks from October to November, correct?
So if you bump them all by 1 week, the only one that would still remain would be the you go to November 15th and drop off the 29th, but all the others have the recommended week prior.
Yes.
Right, and just as a point of information, the Board of Control is the third Tuesday, so I'll have to,
for those couple.
well, or switch off or do something, so.
Okay. Does that work?
Yeah.
But this is my main responsibility, being on this board, so.
Yeah.
Can we stick with the same motion that's up there then? Okay, I motion to accept the 2022-2023 board calendar as presented.
So,
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, so I'm going to go into this as a long process. We spent some time in our committee meeting talking about it. We work with or contract with a policy organization that has significant legal expertise. We work with Neola, we have a contract with them. And one of the things that they do on an update basis is to go through our existing policies and make recommendations based on legal statute changes that have been made, based on certain court cases that may have been settled that have changed things. All of the policy changes that we're going to be recommending this evening are legally recommended policy changes. So in other words, they are based on kind of current legal thought or statute changes that have occurred in the last year. The goal kind of going into this was to hand off a little bit of a clean slate to the new district administrator and get through this process of updating these policies. In addition, the policy consultant that works with Salem and has worked with me the last 3 years will also be changing, so there'll be a new policy consultant that will start working with Salem after this group of policy changes. So the idea was to kind of go through in those areas where there may be they were recommended legal changes as opposed to being kind of more controversial discussion items. So in other words, kind of crossing the I's and dotting the T's. There's an extensive number of them. I do want to point out that board policy does allow this process of going through, recognizing that these policy changes need to occur, and the fact that we have certain technical corrections that need to be made from time to time. It may just be a switch of a number or something like that the board has vested in the authority of the superintendent to make those technical corrections. So although the technical corrections are on our website and listed for families and community members to take a look at, we don't go through a process of approving the technical corrections. And then another aspect of policy is administrative guidelines. And again, those are out there to look at, but administrative guidelines are just that. They're developed by administrators to carry out the policies that the board approves. So the board doesn't approve the administrative guidelines. So that being said, if you go to our website, these are the policies that have been posted up there for probably about 2 weeks now. Is that pretty close? To be able to take a look at. If you go in there even today, you could just click on those and it gives you not just the different policies, but there's also kind of a discussion around each of those policies and why they're recommended. So in meeting with the board committee met and went over all of these policies and made the recommendation to move them to the full board. We talked about a process at the full board level since there are so many. And what the committee advised was that I would just go through, not read off the explanation, just kind of give a heads up as to what the policy was that was being changed. So we just go through, if you as a board member have a question about a particular policy or you want to review why that policy was changed or how it was changed, all you need to do is just ask me to stop and then we can stop on that. But that being said, we'll start out under bylaws. These are the policies that most apply to the board actions. 100 for definitions, 142.1 for electoral process, 142.5 vacancies, 143 authority of individual board members, deleting 144.2 board member ethics because it's been updated in another policy. 144.3 conflict of interest. 144.5 board member behavior and code of conduct. 145 board member anti-harassment. 152 officers. 165.1 notice of meetings. 167.3 public comment at board meetings, and then deleting 142.2 or 174.2 school performance report. This was replaced by another policy. Any questions on the bylaws? Okay, then going into administration, we have 1130, 3230, and 4230. What these are is they're essentially the same policies, but the 100s are for your kind of general school program. The 32s are your professional staff. The 42 are your hourly and support staff. So we have ethics and conflict of interest. 1210, board district administrator relationship. New and revised 1421, 3121, 4121, criminal history record check and employee self-reporting requirement. 1460, 3160, and 4160, physical examination. That's all of the administrative. Any questions on those? Then we move into program, 2210, curriculum development, 2240, controversial issues, 2261.03, district and school report card, 2266, non-discrimination on the basis of sex in education programs or activities, 2430, district-sponsored clubs and activities, 2431, interscholastic athletics. And then, as I referred to before, replacement policy 2700.01, school performance and state accountability report cards. Any questions on those? Then under professional staff and support staff, 3120 and 4120, employment of staff. 4120.04, employment of substitutes. 3122.01 and 4122.01, drug-free workplace. Delete 3170 and 4170, substance abuse. And then place back in 3215, 4215, 5512, and 7434 around use of tobacco and nicotine. And 3216 and 4216, staff dress and grooming. 3340 and 4340, grievance procedure. 4161, unrequested leaves of absence, fitness for duty. Delete 4162, controlled substance and alcohol policy for employees that transport students. Any questions on those? Then we have students 5112 for entrance age. 5113, open enrollment program, interdistrict. 5215, missing and absent children. A new 5500.01, conduct in virtual classroom. You can see that obviously came out of the pandemic. 5500.02, student conduct on school buses. This is just a change of number because when 5500.01 was put into place, it went into the number that the school bus one was on, so they shifted the number on that one. 5520, disorderly conduct. 5720, student activism. 5880, public performances by students. Any questions on the student policies? Then in finances, 6108, authorization to make electronic fund transfers. 6114, cost principles, spending of federal funds. 6146, post issuance, tax exempt bond compliance. 6152, student fees, fines, and charges. New 6152.01, waiver of school fees or fines. So that's all of our financial policies. Any questions on those? And then we have property 7100, facilities planning. 7450, property inventory, and 7455, accounting system for capital assets. Any questions on those? And then moving into operations, 8310, public records. Policy 8450, control of causal contact communicable disease. 8500, food services. Questions on those? Then 92, these are relations, 9270, equivalent education outside the schools, home-based private education. 9500, relations with educational institutions and organizations. 9270, equivalent education outside the schools. I think this is actually, those two are repeated. And then 9700, relations with non-school affiliated groups. So the way in which the policies work is you would have a first meeting committee, then come to the full board for first reading consideration. Our policy requires a system of 2 separate readings with time in between to approve. So this evening, I would be asking for a motion to approve volume 30.2 and 31.1 policy changes for first reading as presented. After this evening, if you approve those for first reading, I'll put, not only will those policies be on our website, but I'll also put these slides that give kind of the explanation as to the changes so that people who have a little, maybe don't want to read through 500 pages of changes, but would like to have that kind of synopsis as to what the changes were in each of the policies. So again, looking for a motion to consider approving volume 30.2 and 31.1 policy changes for first reading as presented.
I motion to approve volume 30.2 and 31.1 policy changes for the first reading as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And we have another smaller set of policy, but they are grouped together and important because they're a group of policies that were significantly affected by the Title IX regulations. Probably heard a lot on the news about kind of waiting for the federal government to make a final set of Title IX recommendations. And so this is an update, it's a legally required update of our policies based on that kind of settling out of Title IX. So it includes 1422, 3122, and 4122, non-discrimination and equal employment opportunity, 1422.02, 3122.02, 4122.02, non-discrimination based on genetic information of the employee, 1623, 3123, 4123, Section 504, ADA prohibition against disability discrimination in employment, 1662, 3362, 4362, employee anti-harassment, and 5517, student anti-harassment. Then 2260, non-discrimination and access to equal educational opportunity. 2260.01, Section 504, ADA prohibition against discrimination based on discrimination. No, prohibition against discrimination based on disability.
That makes more sense.
There's a lot of typing that went into this, So the motion to consider, again, same process. Tonight you would be approving for first reading. All of these board slides would go up on that page so that people who wanted to go in and get that kind of short synopsis on what the changes are could do so. At your next board meeting, then you will have an opportunity to approve for second reading before they actually become policy. So this evening, the motion to consider would be to approve non-discrimination policy changes for first reading as presented.
I move to approve non-discrimination policy changes for first reading as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
So, other policy topics, one of the topics that came up is that the district has received a request to rename the concession booth to honor Deb Morgan, who was our long-term secretary in the main office, but also heavily involved in PTO and that. As we met initially with the policy committee, there's some history in the district around conversation about what is our policy for naming aspects of our facility. And what I was able to find is we don't have a board policy that dictates that or shares how that should be done. And in our committee meeting, kind of the decision was, let's kind of decide, do we want a policy and what should that policy look like? So I sent each of the members of the committee 3 or 4 different options from the local area, everything from Kenosha to Central to Whitewater to I think Wauwatosa, just some area policies to take a look at. And I suggested that sometime in that first half of July, that the policy committee get back together and meet again to take a look at those examples and see if they want to make a recommendation. I think the goal in the request to honor Deb Morgan was that they be able to do something at the very beginning of the school year. This timeline would not preclude that. So let's say, for example, you had a committee meeting in early July, then you went first reading for a policy in the end of July, then even if the school year starts, once you have that first reading, you do have the authority to implement a policy until you get to that next board meeting. So if that initial first reading policy allows for that, you would still have an opportunity to do that at that point. So just giving you an update on that as it relates to the policy and something to kind of think about to move forward to pull that committee meeting together. Information item, we had a proposal for discussion by a board member to look at a school resource officer. Wilmot High School and Central High School have school resource officers at this time. It would be a new budget item. There are some grant monies available, but not readily available to cover the cost of that. So in most cases, it would be a budget item within the school district budget. Just some of the sample duties: providing training for campus staff on maintaining a safe and secure environment, handling calls that are related to the school and would normally be directed to the department, reporting significant incidents to a law enforcement supervisor, investigating and following up on crimes reported at the district schools, assist school administration with the prevention of crime and delinquency on campus, strive to increase student understanding and respect for law enforcement through interaction in informal situations and activities, develop and maintain lines of communication between school staff, students, parents, and the department, and assist school staff in establishing policies that will contribute to the safety of the school staff and students. Work with school administration in identifying gang activity or potential gang activities related to school safety, and then be a positive role model for youth through positive interaction and projection of a professional image. So these are, again, some sample duties for a school resource officer. At this point, it's not on the agenda as an action item, but a discussion item as to what the board's next steps that you would like to see. I don't know if there's any discussion.
Yeah, and I'm the board member who put this forward. A few quick comments. First of all, at our next meeting in July, at our next board meeting in July, I plan to make a motion to approve the hiring of a school resource officer. I would also suggest that the administrative team review the contracts from both Wilmot High School and Central High School. They have full-time SROs just across the border. Antioch High School also does. I will also send to all the administrative staff the email address for Sergeant David Wright, who coordinates the SRO program. And just some quick numbers. Wilmot High School and both Central High School, their share of the budget is at or near $84,000 for the entire school year. And just some other quick comments. We all know that we have 30 plus outside doors. The referendum that passed is set to improve security of the doors and improve overall security in the building. So anyway, as a board member, and we all know that we have 1,000 students in this building on a daily basis, at or near 1,000, at or near 100 employees, and I personally believe that we should have a school resource officer who would be, if approved by the board, an active duty member of the Kenosha County Sheriff's Department who is trained to be an SRO officer. So.
I would like to see the development of some sort of job description.
Absolutely. In the contract for both Wilmot and for Central, they have a very detailed job description. Obviously, our building is a large building. It's on a state highway and a county highway, and I think a job description is very appropriate. I think we have a good model to follow in terms of Wilmot and Central high schools, and those are included in the packet. So.
Do you have any familiarity with middle school SROs or EROs in the area that might have kind of an understanding of what the nuances might be between a high school SRO and a middle school?
Sure, yeah, I've looked at that as well. The reason why I mentioned both Wilmot and Central is that they are schools right here in the area, and the contract will be very similar. When you look at the job description, when you look at the areas of responsibility, there obviously would be some differences in dealing with the much younger students. So I think that is something that we can get. There are SROs in middle school and elementary schools in other districts in the state. And certainly I think the administrative staff and I can certainly find that.
I just think it'd be interesting.
Oh, no,
to
absolutely.
see what the differences are, or where
Sure.
maybe some local schools. I was a principal in Madison, so in a middle school in Madison, we did have a SRO at that time. I think it's been discontinued now, but familiar with both high school and middle school. And there are differences between
Sure.
the two and how they interact with
Sure,
kids.
of course.
We had an instance this last year here of, I don't know if it's miscommunication, if it was bad choices, of a student leaving a room, the classroom moving. Is this the sort of thing that an SRO officer would deal with?
Well, it is a very difficult fine line where you don't want the officer to become the enforcer of school rules. I mean, it is really more about relationship building and trying to address, and certainly there are cases where an officer would intervene, but as a district, you want to be very clear about what the expectation is around the officer addressing what could be typical student, a violation of a student code of conduct that would not be a typical police intervention. And I think that would be one of those things that would be very crucial if, in moving forward, to be clear about what was the role of the SRO in the building and under what circumstances would they be expected or not expected to intervene as it related to student behavior.
Thank you.
Sure, yeah, and the job description for Wilmot and for Central do address that in terms of the responsibility and the relationship between the SRO and the school and the school administration.
I'm looking forward to the description. I'd like to know more about this position.
Okay.
Great. So I was asked to give just kind of a hiring update. I want to preface this a little bit by saying, a lot of turnover. I think that is Salem unique in that? No, unfortunately. I mean, I just got back from a district administrator meeting in the whole area, and certain positions were fighting each other. You can see, Salem is in a pretty good position in that we've been able to lure some people from other districts, but it's really difficult out there. A lot of kind of district to district movement. I think the other thing that's changed is in the past, if you were a teacher who had multiple years in a district, you didn't see a lot of changing to other districts because districts simply wouldn't pay that higher salary that you would come with from another district, but that's kind of changed that environment also. So just to give you a little bit of a rundown in terms of where we're at on filling positions, we had one custodial, 2 paraprofessionals, and 1 teacher assistant. These are hourly positions for retirements. Those, although they have not been filled yet, they are in process. You typically don't always fill those hourly ones way in advance because by the time you get to the school year, they may have found something in between, but kind of working on process and hiring those positions. We had a middle school teacher retirement that has been filled. We approved that at the last meeting we were at. We approved that this evening. That's the English Language Arts one. We have an elementary school teacher that has now been filled this evening. We have speech and language pathologist that was filled. We have 2 administrators that were retirements that have been filled as well. So in that area, we're in pretty good shape. Going into resignations, we have a kindergarten that has now been filled. We have a FIAD teacher that's a little different because we've kind of had a pattern of where they go on leave and then they don't return. So this was actually 2 years ago, went on leave, but that has now been filled. We have 3 special education teachers positions open. We filled 1. We filled 1 this evening. We still have 2 vacant. That's an area, again, that pretty much every district around us is struggling with. We just, at the last district administrator, the bidding could get pretty high for a quality special education teacher. We have an elementary returning, again, this was a leave that was approved last year and then did not return. That one's been filled. 2 elementary teacher positions that were resignations, both of those have been filled. A middle school teacher math, we filled that this evening. And we just got a resignation for a 4K teacher, so I'm assuming Patty was thinking she had most of her positions filled, and now she's got an opening. Almost there. And then we have a couple leave requests that have now been filled. We had a kindergarten 1-year leave request, that's been filled. First grade 1-year leave, that's been filled. And then a second grade 1-year leave, that's been filled. And then we have 2 new positions that we have added. One being a FIAD teacher. If you recall, that was to try and create some common planning time within teacher schedules. That's been filled. And then we increased to have an additional student support coach. That has been filled. Now, some of these positions, when I say, for example, the student support coach has been filled, was from one of our teachers who moved into that position, and then, of course, that created a vacancy, in this case, a special education vacancy. So some of these positions that we've added have actually resulted in vacancies at other places. But overall, right now, we still have the 2 vacant special ed positions and 1 4K from a license perspective, and then a couple like paraprofessional, teacher assistant, and custodial. So any questions on that? I looked at last year, we're in that about 12 licensed teacher filling, but it's a little deceiving because we also added a couple positions. Last year, when I did my new teacher orientation, we were at 11. So we're a little bit higher, but not significantly higher in terms of where we were at last year. Any questions on that? Okay. And then a little bit of a referendum update. I've done some little checkoffs. Like I said, there were things I wanted to make sure the district had resolved before I left. So we have an architect contract now with PRA, so check that off. A construction management contract tonight with Myron. We have secured the financing. We'll go in that in a little bit. We have the preliminary design phase close to complete. One of the big goals before I left was to, obviously not gonna determine where every outlet is and where every little window is and that kind of thing, but to have the general design kind of planned and ready to go to move forward so that they can move into complex blueprints and then into bidding on the different projects. And we had the construction management firm on site today going through a lot of the aspects of the project. The big news is in financing. We actually had a bond rating improvement. That was pretty exciting. It was a very extensive process that Marquez and I and Lisa from Baird went through. And she was very hopeful that we could move up a notch, and we did. So that's exciting. One of the major reasons that's exciting is it gives you a different class of investor that has a little more ability to invest, which then also pays off in terms of overall interest. On June 22nd, according to Lisa, a lot of interest in our bond. Part of the reason, or in our bonds, part of the reason for that was because we had made the decision to put it on the 12-year. So a lot of districts going out with a 20-year or a 25-year, and so definitely some interest in ours because of that. We settled in at 3.70. You know, when we started down this road in December, it was a totally different world when it came to interest rates, and we were very hopeful that we could hit that 3% in the last couple months. It's exciting that we got below 4%. So the 3.7 is really good for where we're at. You know, one of the things I would say to the district, you know, there will come a time where if interest rates drop significantly again, the district can always consider refinancing that. But for now, I think we're in a good place. And the main reason I say that is because it allows the district to be able to follow through on what we had promised to our community. And that was a 12-year bonding, so not extended out, and then no increase in the referendum portion of the mill rate. So that's exciting because that was a promise that we made to the district. You can see the payout. I won't go into great detail, but you can see those nice even payments ending in 2034. As you can see over where you see the gray, the 1.5 million, that is our operating referendum that passed, and the reason it's in gray is that was only approved for 3 years. So 3 years from now, the board will need to think about what they want to renew from an operating, but the bonding and building phase is it only goes through that 12-year payout. Any questions on referendum financing? So to answer your question, check 3.7.
Really, credit cards?
I did want to point out on the right-hand side, it has the combined mill rate, so that's including the non-recurring referendum, the 3-year one, and then also the bonding. So you can see that this current year, those combined rates for our operating referendum at 3.6 million, it was a 3.32 mill rate, and right now it's projected to drop by 20 cents. So obviously we still have to do the budget for next year, and there's still a lot of variables, but we should be able to deliver on the promise of no tax increase.
Yeah, and that is so significant, and that's, you know, even though, as we all know, the referendum did not pass by a huge margin, but it passed. And I think that was one of the key, I mean, that was one, and based on what people have said to me, that was one of the reasons why they voted for it. There were a number of other reasons, of course.
I think that we had the conversation with Lisa. We knew going into the 2 question was going to be a little risky and would require a lot of communication with the community in terms of why we needed to do that. But now that we have passed that, the conversation is much easier going forward, because now you have kind of separated out what is it that we need to keep our facilities in good shape for our students, and then what is it that we need to actually operate, keep the lights on, pay salaries, that type of thing. And so separating those things out, although it was risky and it was probably not as clear a passage as you might have liked to have had, it did pass, but I think it will set the district up then going forward in a much better position to make that continued communication with the community. So. Administrator reports. It should be only one tonight.
Lonely tonight. All right, I just wanted to, give you an update on how we develop class lists at the elementary level. I've had a couple of questions about that. As we're looking ahead to next year, everyone wants to know where their kiddos are gonna be and how do we figure that out. So it's a process that involves a lot of people, and it's done with a lot of care. So the past 2 years, we've had the whole grade level team of the existing classes get together, including special ed teacher, any support people like the speech teacher who might be involved with those students, or our guidance counselor, social worker, anyone who's worked with the kiddos and know them really well. And they work through this big process of how do we sort kids into the appropriate classroom. So if you go to the next slide, these are the kinds of things that we're considering when we're deciding what teacher to assign to a student. It's really important to us that we have balanced classes and that we don't have, too many students with significant needs with one teacher who's trying to manage all of those needs. We try to balance that across the grade level. We've got 5 teachers to work with, so that gives us a lot of options. So we work to have an even distribution of boys and girls, making sure students with IEPs have appropriate support. So it might make sense to group a couple of kiddos who have reading goals with the same teacher. Might not be the best pairing to have someone who has more significant behavior needs, to have multiple students in the same classroom. So those are some considerations that we take. We might have students who have, they might be even just at the same reading level, so that as teachers are doing small group instruction, it's easier for grouping and instruction in that way. We also look at social considerations for kids. They might have had some conflict with a student in their class that year, and we want to make sure that they're not together the following year. Or the opposite. We've got kids who have been together for a couple of years and it's time to separate. So we think about that as well. And then matching classroom management styles or teaching styles. So you might know that your child really needs structure, and we know that about we know that about them too, so we're going to try to pair them with that teacher, whereas another student may need a little more relaxed style, or they may butt heads with their teacher. So we look at those kinds of things as well. And making sure that the same teachers aren't getting, we call the tricky kids, that require a lot of time and energy. It can be a lot for teachers to manage through the year, and we don't want them every year to wind up with that same situation and feel that level of burnout that can happen. So we try to make sure to take that into consideration as we're assigning as well. And then family input. You know your children. And while we're not able to necessarily assign a specific teacher that you request, we can take into consideration the things that you know about your child and the things you know about the teachers in the building and their styles, and use that as one of the components that we consider in placement. So I did include the section from our student and parent handbook that explains this, that while we can't accept parent requests for specific teachers, we do take all of these things into consideration. You're always welcome to contact me with those considerations. We ask that you do it by May 15th because we do class lists before school gets out. I'm in the process of reviewing them now, and then as new students enroll, they enroll all summer long, and so we're trying to make sure that those classes stay balanced as we're adding new students in, which means students might be shifted around a little bit. And we just want to be really careful that we don't put the class list out there and then wind up having a shift later that then can upset the balance there.
I have a question. Sorry.
No, go.
I remember a process at the end of the school year where a grade level group of teachers, like 6th grade teachers, would get together and try to organize list suggestions for the 7th grade teachers, because they saw these students for the entire 9-month
Yes.
period, and we feel this might work best, you might want to consider this. Is that still happening?
That's exactly what we do, yes. And we have not just the classroom teachers, but our school counselor, social worker, anyone who might work with the students, our student support coach, any adults in the building who know those kids really well can help make those pairings.
It was fascinating to watch the teacher, the grade level teachers discuss where to go next. Some of the kids would end up having to come to music, and so I'd want to be there at some of the meetings, and it was interesting. They know a lot about
It's
these
a good
kids.
process.
Sorry, Steve.
But
Yeah,
I, you
no,
know, I
it's
put the puzzle pieces up there because it's a jigsaw. Every time, like you think one student is gonna go great with this group of kids, but then what about this one, and where does this one fit? And so it's a constant movement of what's going to work out best with not just the teacher match, but then the other students in the classroom as well.
Yeah, and I mean, out of curiosity, approximately how many requests did you get up until May 15th for the next school year?
That came directly to me, probably 5. I know that there's a lot of communication between parents and teachers as well, so I know that that was taken into consideration as well.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Ed.
So committee reports, I won't go into great depth on these because we had action items that were significantly related to both of those. Building and Grounds was again that meeting to kind of pare down the construction management firms. And then the Policy and Community Relations meeting was clearly the meeting to go through all the policies. Going forward, I had recommended sometime in July that you consider a Policy and Community Relations Committee meeting. I anticipate that you could have a Building and Grounds, a need for Building and Grounds come in there somewhere as we continue down the road with the referendum. But all of that being said, your next regular school board meeting, 7 p.m. Tuesday, July 26th, 2022, in the LGI.
Will you be joining virtually?
I will see.
Great answer. Oh, boy.
I'll be wearing my t-shirt.
Please do. Too bad there's not reverse video on the. Great. I move to adjourn. Oh, yes?
Yeah, no, I was just, I'd like to make a request that with regards to whatever is put together for the next board meeting for the SRO, that maybe there would be maybe 2 board members who would be available to work with staff on that. As
Oh,
far
like a committee?
Yeah, because I'm not sure whether, I mean, that sort of personnel is also policy, it's a combination. I certainly would be interested, so maybe, I mean, I'll send you an email, if that's okay.
Okay.
On that?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay, thank you.
I move to adjourn the meeting at 8:37.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.